This is Luke chapter 21, verses 1 through to 6. And he, that's the Lord Jesus, looked up and saw the rich putting their gifts into the treasury. And he saw a poor widow putting in 2 small copper coins. And he said, "Truly I say to you, this poor widow put in more than all of them. For they all out of their surplus put into the offering, but she out of her poverty put in all that she had to live on." And while some were talking about the temple, that it was adorned with beautiful stones and votive gifts, he said, "As for these things which you're looking at, the days will come in which there will not be left one stone upon another, which will not be torn down." Can you see that Jesus is just the disciples were impressed with the temple and what a fine building it was, but Jesus wasn't interested. In fact, in this discourse, he's really only interested in this woman, this widow woman who put in two put in 2 small copper coins into the offertory, which was everything that she had to live on, which was an act of faith. And all of the rich were putting in their great gifts, which no doubt were the ones which were paying for these programs in the temple, for rebuilding the temple or repairing the temple and what have you. But Jesus isn't interested. But the disciples are impressed with buildings. And Jesus says, "As for these things which you're looking at, the days will come in which there will not be left one stone upon another, which will not be torn down." And Jesus is looking ahead at the terrible siege of Jerusalem, when the temple was finally destroyed and it was burnt down. And in fact, I think it's Eusebius, or one of the historians, tells us that there was so much gold in the temple that when it was burnt down, the gold melted and it went between the cracks in the stones. And subsequently, people came in, looters came in, and they threw all the stones down. All that was left of this charred temple, they knocked all the stones down so they could get between the cracks to rescue the gold. And so Jesus' prophecy here is true, that not one stone will be left on top of another. But more than that, we need to realize that Jesus here is unimpressed with buildings, but he is impressed with a woman with 2 copper coins who in faith will give away the copper coins and trust her Father in heaven to provide for her. That is what Jesus is impressed with. There's a verse from John which says, Jesus says, "I've come to give them life and life in abundance." And as we look across Christendom, it would seem to me that it's more like he's come to give us buildings, and buildings in abundance. You look around Newtown, where I live, or Shrewsbury, or any town in the United Kingdom, and there's just building upon building upon building upon building. And Jesus is unimpressed. As the disciples are impressed with all of the stuff, and he said, and the votive gifts, the gifts that people have given voluntarily for these building programs. Jesus here couldn't care. He couldn't care. But what he is interested in is when this woman comes with her 2 little copper coins, and by faith she offers it to the Lord, believing that the Lord will provide for her. That's what the Lord Jesus cares about. And we need to remember his word here. When people were impressed with buildings, it didn't seem to bother Jesus.